afflicts people of African descent. Sickle cell victims face a diminished life expectancy, and while drugs and blood transfusions can help alleviate symptoms, the only potential cure thus far is a costly bone marrow transplant, which hasn't been tried in patients over 13 years old and has proven fatal to some. We spoke to T-Boz by phone at her home in Atlanta on Wednesday, and she told us, quote, "I've done everything they said I couldn't do because I tried very hard to keep a positive attitude. When I'm touring, I get sick a lot and have to go to the hospital," end quote. She adds that she went public in part to quash rumors that she has AIDS. T-Boz became a spokesperson for the Sickle Cell Disease Association of America. To help their cause, call them at 310-216-6363. 25-year-old Tion T-Boz Watkins of the chart-topping group TLC announced on Wednesday that she's got an incurable disease, sickle cell anemia. It's an extremely painful and ultimately fatal inherited blood disease that primarily affects people of African descent, and to a lesser extent those of Mediterranean origin. Here's more from T-Boz and from Dr. Babette Wexler, an expert on sickle cell anemia at the New York Hospital Cornell Medical Center in Manhattan. 1 in 400 African Americans is believed to carry the sickle cell gene, which causes red blood cells to distort into a crescent-like shape and become stuck in capillaries. This cuts off blood flow to bones, organs, and other bodily tissues of people with the disease.
The episodes of pain come on unexpectedly, and they can be totally incapacitating, and they're very difficult to deal with both physically and psychologically.
From her home in Atlanta, T-Boz told us on the phone that she learned she had sickle cell anemia as a child, and that, quote, "When I was born, my mother didn't know what I had. I was told I could never play outside, never dance extra hard."
By the age of about 1 year, the fetal type hemoglobin goes away, and the sickle hemoglobin, with all its dangerous properties of making the red cells abnormal, appears, and the children begin to get bouts of pain or swelling of their hands and feet, and bouts of fever and illness.
Sickle cell patients on average have their life expectancy cut by 7 to 10 years. Up to 20% may live beyond 60, 10% die in infancy or childhood, and others can become crippled in their youth and die by age 30. T-Boz says, quote, "The older I get, the worse it gets. When I'm touring, I get sick a lot and have to go to the hospital. All I can do is keep praying and stay positive."
When I have a sickle cell crisis, I mean, it's like, it feels like a sharp knife going, you know, stabbing your back. And it's a really sharp pain. And sometimes I can't control it, and I start crying and screaming because it hurts so much.
There are some drug and blood transfusion treatments to relieve some of the symptoms and pain, and one that hasn't had the success hoped for.
In a few cases, we can even do bone marrow transplants to cure the disease, but that is expensive and difficult and dangerous to do, so it's not often used.
That procedure hasn't yet been tried with patients over 13 years old whose organs have sustained more damage. T-Boz says she went public about her illness now to quash internet rumors that she had AIDS, and because, quote, "I feel bad for all those mothers whose babies cry constantly and they don't know what's wrong." T-Boz is now following Bill Cosby and Danny Glover as a celebrity spokesperson for the Sickle Cell Disease Association of America. She is the association's youngest spokesperson ever, and its first to actually carry the disease. She'll appear at her first fundraiser October 10th in Miami, when she'll unveil an all-white rock band she's been working with called She's the Man.
That she's been living with the very painful hereditary disease, sickle cell anemia, a disease that slows many people down. It definitely hasn't stopped her.
There are a couple different treatments that that people are doing these days, from bone marrow transplant to using anti-cancer drugs.
Right.
Have you investigated any of those? Or?
No, I don't. My whole thing is, like, I'm still living, I'm still healthy, and I won't let no disease take over me. I really take over it. But before I do something that I don't really know about, I'm not going to wake up 5 years later, "Oh, yeah, we forgot to tell you it caused cancer." I'm like, no, thank you.
Right.
So that's why I became the spokesperson as well, because I want to do benefits to raise money to really, 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 really 100% make sure that bone marrow transplants and whatnot really work.
Also afflicted with sickle cell, we learned this week, is rapper Prodigy of the group
Trio TLC announced that she has sickle cell anemia, a painful and ultimately fatal blood disease that mostly affects people of African descent. This Thursday, T-Boz will host a party at the Liquid Club in South Beach, Florida, to officially announce her status as the national spokesperson for the Sickle Cell Disease Association of America. Serena Altschul recently caught up with T-Boz in L.A., where T-Boz talked openly about having sickle cell anemia and what it's like to be the organization's new spokesperson.
I'll be the first woman to become the spokesperson and also celebrity to actually have the disease. So that's like history in the making. I was like, cool. And plus, I can relate better because it's almost like, how can you speak about something and not really have gone through that? And I ache just the same as all those other people who have what I have, and I get put in the hospital, and I go through the same things. I understand the mental stress, the emotional stress, and the physical, you know, wear and tear it does to your body.
Right.
So I think I hope I can make a change and do some good.
The Miami party will also feature a performance from She's the Man, a rock band that T-Boz's company, She Entertainment, is developing.
Music, but there's something else about your health that's come up in the media more recently, and I want you to tell us about that too. You have sickle cell anemia, and you become a national spokesperson. Tell us how that's been for you to talk about something that's so close in your life.
It's the first time that I've talked about it, but I mean, I think it's a good thing that I came out with it, because now that I have, a lot of people have come up to me and they're like, well, I have sickle cell too. But I think I'm in a position to touch a lot of people and hopefully bring in enough money to make a change.
Now, that's a disease that you're born with, right? For some of our viewers who don't know. So you've had it all your life. Why was it at this point that you decided to come out and talk about it?
Really, it was when I would get put in the hospital on tour, and the nurses and the doctors, instead of taking care of me, were worrying about what my problem was. Did she have AIDS or whatever? So I had to clear that up. No, I don't have AIDS, I have sickle cell. But it's a shame that it had to come out that way.
Right.
You know, and everybody being, you know, a trip and starting rumors, but that's basically how.
We have an expert, right? We want
Dr. Cross
to keep using the term.
No, we're like double twins. We think alike. We have Dr. Cross from the Washington Hospital Center here in D.C. Can you explain and break it down to us, for those of us who don't know what sickle cell is, you know, in medical terms? What exactly is sickle cell?
Sickle cell anemia, to put it simply, it's a disease of the red blood cells. Those are the cells in the bloodstream that carries oxygen to the tissue, and also those are the cells in the blood that give it color. In sickle cell disease, those cells lose it under certain conditions, will lose its shape, and by losing its shape, it clogs up the blood vessels that supply different organs. And when the blood vessels get clogged, the organs are deprived of oxygen. They don't get oxygen, and people experience pain. The tissue can die, the different organs can die, and the cells themselves are also, their lifespan is also shorter, so patients can become anemic, as the name implies, sickle cell anemia.
Let me ask you a question. What type of effect does it have on an everyday person who has sickle cell? What are some of the symptoms?
It varies. It's a very diverse presentation. There are patients who actually will go through childhood, adulthood without having any crises. There are patients who will present with their first signs of sickle cell when they're 30s, when they're 40s. More often than not, the patients will start having pain, which is the primary symptom. Will start having pain during childhood. Pain is one thing. Patients can become anemic, and therefore they can become weak and tired, and they can get things like jaundice. That's where the eye turn yellow, and so forth.
Now, this is a disease that most predominantly affects African-American people, which is why it's so important for us to be informed about it, right?
It primarily affects Afro-Americans. The incidence is actually a little less than 1%. The gene, however, the underlying trait is actually present in about 8% of Afro-Americans.
And when you talk about the blood cells, I'm sorry, teacher, one more question. When you talk about the blood cells changing form, they sickle, right? And that's where it gets its name.
They actually...
and that's where the pain comes from, I guess.
The best way to look at it, or to picture it, is if the normal red cell is shaped like a donut, a normal donut. And when they sickle, when they lose oxygen, they elongate. They actually look like a twister or an eclair.
Everybody got that, right? Okay, all right, cool.
It's important to know about.
That's right.
So when exactly, you said sometimes people can go into their 30s and 40s and not having symptoms. When did you start having symptoms? All your life?
ASAP.
Really?
As soon as I came out my mother.
Oh, wow.
I was diagnosed at birth, and then at 7, I was diagnosed with something I still don't understand yet, so I'm still
Learning
messed
about
up,
it. Right,
you
right,
know,
right.
basically.
And how often has it kept you off stage? How often has it interrupted your performance schedule?
Well, I messed up a lot of tours
Really?
where they had to stop. The last tour we were on last year, Boys to Men, the tour was ended because I was put in hospital in Phoenix. I've been in hospitals like across the world. Like you see my bills come, it's like any city I'm in.
Is there anything that triggers that, or is it just out of the blue? It just
A lot
happens?
of stuff that triggers it. My lifestyle is hectic anyway for a 100% healthy person.
Right.
You don't get sleep, you don't eat right. And
Constantly
me, I don't
going,
exercise, you know, which I probably should. But stress brings it on. Now that I'm older, if I catch a cold or the flu, when I was little, if somebody punched me too hard, I would go into a crisis. Anything you can name would put me in a crisis. So probably the last time I was in hospital was 3 months ago, and that's because I caught the flu.
Wow.
But I was in there like 2 weeks, and then afterwards you have to go through withdrawal from all the drugs, excuse me, and it's like a 2-week process because it's like if my legs hurt and my arms hurt, I have to learn how to walk over again or how to use my arms again, so I can't walk.
So it's really debilitating.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Kind of rough. So do you take your vitamins on tour with you and stuff? Always popping vitamins and things like that?
I'm not the best role model when it comes to taking care of myself because I really could honestly do better, and I'm really trying. But I'm gonna be honest, child.
It's a
I
hard
took one
schedule
last
to keep
night,
on,
but
sure.
it is. It's hard to pop pills every day.
That's right, you're right.
But I'm a hard-headed person, just like my mom was talking to me last night. Oh, look, I get pale. My symptoms, I get really pale, and I have bags and dark circles. And it's funny because a lot of people, like when I perform, they really don't know what it takes for me to get on stage in front of everybody, because you don't know that I'm about to be rushed in the ambulance to the hospital.
Right, and you're probably feeling it, and we can't even see that.
I will finish performing.
I want you to tell us exactly how it feels, because I'm sure we can't even imagine the pain. We got to take a break, so think about it. As soon as we get back, we'll talk more with T-Boz, more Teen Summit in a minute. Welcome back to Teen Summit. Gonna get some final comments from our guests. We're gonna start with you, T-Boz, and I know going out into that last break, I asked you to describe the kind of pain, and we were talking about during the break, but if you can just share a little bit of what you go through pain-wise on a daily basis. I don't think we have any concept of how that must be for you living through it.
It's not daily, but I can tell when I'm about to be sick and when it's gonna be a bad one, so I'll just instantly go to the hospital. But the only way I can describe the pain, and I heard this little Cuban girl describe it the same way. It feels like if somebody took a large butcher knife and just stabbed me constantly all over my body, from my jaws down to my ankles to my wrists. Every joint in my body hurts.
At the same time?
At the same time. And when it hurts in my chest and my back, I can't breathe good, so it's hard to talk. It's a trip. That's why I ain't like to talk about it.
I know,
because it's a trip, because I don't like to think about it. But it's I can't describe it. It's excruciating. Because sometimes I'm in so much pain, I get delirious and I have delusions and I think I'm somewhere else I'm not, and I'd be like really out of my mind.
Oh, God.
Cause, so, it's a trip.
Thank you for sharing that with us, so I appreciate that.